Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Kellen Klein. I'm the Executive Director of Citizens for Community. We are a local nonpartisan nonprofit that works to foster a more connected community by encouraging civility, collaboration, and civic engagement. And these community forums are one of our biggest events of the year, talking about hot topics facing the town. Raise your hand if this is your first time at a C4C event. Awesome. That's like almost half of the crowd, which is great to see. Thank you so much. We hope it won't be your last. If it is, you can blame it on me. I'm supported at C4C by an awesome board of directors. If my board members who are in attendance could raise their hands. We've got Jane over here. We've got Adam and Sarah at the back and Jim over here. If you're dissatisfied with the event, you can let them know about it, okay? We have got some paraphernalia on your seats that you might be sitting on or you might have moved. This is some information for you for throughout the event. There's a take-home packet with some facts and figures, some resources. There's a digital version of that you can find online. The link is at the top of the first page, and that is where the recording of this event will also be posted after the fact. We are live streaming it right now, and we'll put it up on our YouTube page later. You also have a note card. You are welcome to write down a question during the event. If you just lift up your hand, Jim will come around and grab it. We'll also have a roving wireless mic during the Q&A portion if you'd like to ask questions directly. You also have a feedback form. We'd love to hear from you via that feedback form about how you think this event went and some other ideas about how we can be supporting this community. And I think that's all the stuff on your... Yes, Jim?
Tell everyone in the back row that there's handouts in the empty chairs.
Oh, yes. If you did not get a handout at the front, it's an incentive to move you to the front. So peer pressure, you have to come sit up here. So, or just come grab one and go back. It's fine. All right, a few other things that I want to get to at the beginning. First, I want to acknowledge all the ways that we're supporting and pulling this event off. First and foremost, by our core partner on this, the Nugget newspaper. We really wouldn't have you all in the room here without them. I like to refer to the Nugget as the single source of truth for Sisters Country, and we're really fortunate to partner with them on this. Jim Cornelius, the editor-in-chief, is over there. You might have heard that the Nugget just shifted to a subscription model for at-home delivery. I would really encourage you to sign up. We are so fortunate to have a small hometown paper like the Nugget here in this community. Small town journalism is disappearing across Oregon. We want to keep the Nugget around, so I really encourage you to support them and subscribe. We also want to thank our foremost sponsor for these events, St. Charles Health System. They've been really integral to supporting belonging across Central Oregon, and we've been really fortunate to have their support all year. A few other things I want to get to before I turn over to our esteemed speakers here. We always start off our public events with some ground rules. These are our Speak Your Piece cards. We have some out on the front table if you'd like to take some home afterwards. They are appropriate everywhere from the Thanksgiving dinner table to big community forums. But we ask everyone at our events to adhere to these terms of engagement for conversation and dialogue with one another. So we ask that today you will pay attention, listen, be inclusive, not gossip, show respect, be agreeable, apologize, give constructive criticism, take responsibility, and we always have a choose your own adventure at the end. I'm going to say for today, it's going to be think about a way to take action and follow up on this after the fact. All right, so our topic, youth well-being in Sisters Country. Are the kids all right? I think we'll have it solved by the end of today. I have a very clear answer for you, don't worry. But I want to just give a couple of caveats and acknowledgements that this is a really big issue. It's not exclusive to sisters. You know, this is something that folks are thinking about across the country. I don't expect to solve anything today. We like to have these conversations be the beginning of the conversation, not the end. So again, I hope that you'll take this and maybe organize conversations of your own, whether it's with your family, your peers, or maybe come to us and we can help facilitate follow-up conversations around this topic going forward. A few other caveats. This is not a referendum on the Sisters School District. We are so fortunate to be in this space today, this beautiful new building, but we're going to be covering all aspects of youth well-being, not just our educational system, so please keep that in mind. I also want to acknowledge that in these types of conversations, sometimes it's easy to focus on the challenges or what's not working as opposed to focusing on what is working, whether it's for youth or housing at our last forum or something like that. So we're going to try and do a little bit of both of those here today. And I just want you to keep that in mind is that, you know, there's pros and cons to all of these complex issues. I also want to acknowledge that we only have one youth on the panel today. We are trying to have a diversity of opinions and perspectives represented on this issue. But Faith has generously offered to be representative for all of the youth in our community. So, and she actually interviewed every single child in this town before speaking here tonight. No, but so just please recognize that this is, one of our leaders, our youth leaders in this community, and that's fantastic. But that the youth experience here in Sisters Country is not monolithic, and so we're going to try and piece that out as well. With that, any questions, comments, concerns? Let's get started. All right. So I'm joined up here by Charlie, Faith, Amy, and Lindsay. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. If we could start, let's start at the far end and bring it back this way with Lindsay. If you could tell us your name, what you're doing with your life or your profession. And I have a specific question for you, which is sort of your opening thesis. From your unique perspective, are the kids in Sisters Country all right? And then we'll wrap it up after that. So.
I'm Lindsay Overstreet. I grew up here in Sisters and moved back to the Panelist area and then to Sisters 2 years ago. And I have worked for Mosaic Community Health for about 11 years. We just recently opened the school-based health center here in Sisters, and so I was really privileged to be able to be providing behavioral health care for kids in my hometown. And so I feel very lucky to be able to do that. In terms of this, really simplified question, are the kids all right? I think like anything, the answer is always, it depends, right? So in my work, I see kids who are really thriving here. And I think we have a lot that is benefiting children, most specifically a very close community that looks out for kids, right? So I think in many ways, yes, they are. And one of the things that I'm really working to help kids with is being comfortable with their emotions matching the situation. So that doesn't always mean we don't feel difficult emotions, right? But when their emotion matches the circumstance, to me, that's what mental wellness looks like. And so helping kids through that. And I really feel like students and Sisters are open to that, right? And they're working towards that, and they have families that are supportive. So overall, yes. And of course, there's things we can do to help them feel better.
I already have some inspiration for our next conversation. It could be helping adults work through emotions matching the situation, right? Amy.
Have you seen the documentary, The Teen Brain? It just came out. It's like a 10-minute snapshot, and it speaks to just what you're talking about, emotions matching the situation. I'll send it to you. And I don't even know. So my name is Amy Formica. I actually live in Bend. I was a theater teacher, middle school and high school theater teacher for many years. I've lived all over the country. I taught in Vermont, New York City, Seattle. I have 3 younger kids, ages 10, 7, and 4. I took a break from teaching to be a mom, and now I'm actually getting a master's in clinical mental health counseling from OSU Cascades in Bend. I co-founded a group called Well Wired last year with another mom friend, and we call it a family community and healthy tech advocacy group. We have been going and speaking at elementary schools in Bend Pine and anywhere we can get in, essentially, and trying to engage with families in our community in Central Oregon around the issues of technology in our homes with our kids, with the frame that we are realizing now that a lot of the technology we use, which is so prevalent and so impactful in all of our lives, has pretty significantly addictive features, and how do we, as parents, grapple with that? So we really feel like it is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, parenting challenge of our generation, and we're trying to build community around that issue. I don't have a thought on the kids being all right. I just think that this is a process that the whole community is sort of trying to reimagine how do we use technology specifically as a tool for connection, belonging, enhancing learning, without kind of being sucked into what we now know can be a cycle that is really hard to get out of and can be problematic for kids and grown-ups.
Really one of the challenges of our time, right? One of my favorite quotes is from E.O. Wilson, who said, "The trouble with humanity is that we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology." So it's appropriate for that issue. Faith.
Hi, everybody. My name is Faith Keeton. I've lived here my whole life. I've gone to school year K through 12. I'm a senior class vice president and I'm a senior. And along with Amy, I don't have a very clear answer
There is no yes or no very clear. I will say I've seen a lot of struggles here and I've seen a lot of accomplishments in my classmates.
Thank you, Faith. We'll get more into that for sure. Charlie?
I'm Charlie. Is this working? Okay, sorry, I couldn't tell. I don't have a switch on mine, so I thought it was full unplugged. So, I've worked here in Sisters since 1994 and as a school counselor, and so it's been 7th through 12th grade. And actually had 7 years of that work before I came here, so I've been counseling for a long, long time. My 5 children all went through schools here, so as I was asked to come on this panel, I thought, I'm also a parent. My kids are adults, but I get what it means to be a parent. And I just look forward to what all is going to be talked about. As I was invited, I have a million things in my mind. I know that we have a lot to cover, but maybe we'll have to have another panel after tonight, just with Amy. I mean, honestly, I think that'd be good. You know, I kind of agree with Faith. As a counselor, I feel a little bit responsible for the students. And so when I first was asked the question, I'm like, well, I hope we are, because I'm part of helping make sure we're doing all right. But of course, it's a population and there's lots of challenges at any generational time. And right now, I think we have some unique ones that we need to pay attention to. On the good side, I would say, after getting called back out of retirement 3 years ago, I know we're going to talk about COVID later. I've seen kids really recover. When I first came back, I was like, what happened? So I was gone during that whole time period. But kids are resilient. I need to keep saying that. They really are. We need to help keep them growing and working on that resiliency. But, you know, there's always challenges. I think we have some unique ones right now, along with a lot of great things. As Faith being a senior, I recently wrote a recommendation for college for her, along with a whole bunch of other ones this last month. And looking at what our kids have opportunities to do throughout K through 12, we have a lot of good things happening that we need to also remember every day.
Yeah, to that point of celebrating the successes as well as the challenges. Well, thanks, y'all. Let's dive a little deeper. I've sort of split this conversation into 4 segments. So part 1, we're calling the state of the children. We'll move on to the state of the parents. Then we'll continue with the elephant in the room. And then we'll conclude with it takes a village before opening up to Q&A. So the state of the children, I would be remiss if I didn't go back to Faith for the first question here. Faith, you've grown up your whole life here. Can you tell us a bit about what it's like to be a teen in Sisters Country today? And that can include things like school, like just existing in this broader community, what modern teen life is like with friends and family. Give us the inside scoop here. Is it all just Taylor Swift all the time?
Yeah. Looking at the school aspect of it, we have a lot of really great programs here, like the IE program, if you know it, or like the folk festival. We have these opportunities that most schools don't have. I think that's really incredible. I think we have really strong bonds with each other in the school and with our teachers. Some of the best, most impactful relationships I have been with teachers that have guided me and mentored me. So with that, it's really hard to find your place in the community since we're so connected. Like I have cousins that just moved here and they had a hard time finding their place in our community. I also know it's a small town, which means everybody knows everybody and everybody knows each other's business, which leads to gossip, and especially online, it's easy to talk about other people, especially the Facebook community watch. I've seen some really bad stuff come out of that.
Hey, a quick follow-up question. You talk about it being such a tight-knit school cohort and really close to your teachers as well. Do you think that is just inherent because of the size of this community and everything being so small that it's easier to make those connections? Or do you think there's something unique or different about the school community or just the community in general that makes it so you feel that tight-knittedness?
I would say both. It comes with the people that are in the community. but also the ability to have those one-on-one conversations and meet after class and be like, oh, like, what do you think about that? Just being able to know each other.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's really interesting hearing you talk about the, I call it sort of the welcoming or nature or lack thereof of our community in terms of how do you integrate into the community when, it is so small. That's definitely a sentiment I've heard from adults who moved here, especially, those maybe who moved here during the pandemic. None of us were hanging out. That can be really challenging. I know I felt very fortunate to get a tight-knit community here pretty quickly, largely thanks to having kids actually, but, I know that's not the experience for everyone. Charlie, I want to go to you next. Again, acknowledging that the youth experience is not identical for all kids across this community. I don't know if folks saw some of those stats that we had showcased when you were walking in, or also in your packet, but we know that, for instance, at the school, the graduation rate, four-year graduation rate is 90%. But, we also have like 22% of families or something like that qualifying for SNAP benefits. We have, Kurt Scholes told me that, there's dozens of kids in this community who qualify as houseless and either explicitly living in the forest or couch surfing. So can you sort of describe that trajectory and tell me, or sort of elaborate on maybe what Faith described in terms of the youth experience?
Well, I think Faith is right. It's not just her own experience about how kids, I think, feel, at least at the high school level, about that connection with everyone, and especially their teachers. Years ago, I had somebody come and visit the school, and when they were leaving, there was an adult friend of mine. He said, something's different about this place, but I can't put my finger on it. And he called me as he was driving home back to Eugene, and he said, I figured it out. He said, every single interaction I saw between kids and kids, adults and kids, adults with adults, was respectful, eye-to-eye communication. And that's so true, I think. And I think even for the kids that maybe are struggling, that's a safe place. And I think all the schools are really safe places for our kids, even if they're in homeless or in poverty or whatever. I think they do feel safe in the school system and feel connected there. And because of our size, we're able to look after people. We talk about kids not falling through the cracks. If we see someone that just looks out of sorts or something's changed, we notice it, and that makes a big difference in this. So I think our school is the perfect size, our school district right now. As far as, I don't know all the other things you said that made me think about lots of things to talk about. I think that, Faith and I were talking beforehand. You asked I think in the question you sent me is, what's it like for the kids that come to your office? And I do think for every kid that comes in, there's at least one other that should. And so that's what our job is to look out for those that maybe are having a struggle, but they're kind of hiding it and they're just being private. It's hard if you're having a hard time. Who wants to be needy, right? Everyone wants to be self-sufficient, standing on their own 2 feet. So sometimes kids hide it really well, and so do their parents. Because we got to figure this out, but we're going to figure it out by ourselves. That's what I think happens sometimes.
That's a good segue to Lindsay, I think, talking about, who comes in and who doesn't, who's certain, who isn't. Another stat from our packet that was shown on the screen is, I think in the last year, 25% of Oregon youth had a major depressive episode, and of those, less, or just about 50% got some sort of medical or counseling treatment for it. So, Lindsay, we can fold that into that element into the question as well, but I think you have a unique perspective having grown up here and now raising your kids here as well. Can you describe what you're seeing today in the Sisters Youth population and maybe how that might have changed compared to what you experienced growing up here?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest strengths that I see is I have so few students that come into my office that complain about having nothing to do, right? When I was a teenager here, that was like all we talked about was how there's nothing to do here. And I feel like ECOS and IE and Americana are really actually a significant there's significant reasons why that complaint isn't so prevalent, right? We have brought in so many incredible opportunities for kids in this community, and those are just a couple, right? But there's a dance studio in town. There's all sorts of recreation activities. There's all sorts of different ways for people to be connected. And I have seen that change dramatically from when I was here, when there weren't a lot of opportunities. And if you were in the haves, you maybe could have a parent take you to band for some of that specialty stuff. But now we have a lot of things here that kids can access. So I think we really need to keep that momentum and make sure that we're fostering those activities of all different types for kids and sisters. I would say differences that I see are really the like income disparity has grown a lot wider, right? So I see a lot more students that don't have supportive parents, not because they don't want to be, but because they are really busy, right? Trying to keep their family afloat and trying to maintain their home. So I think the way in which the income disparity plays out in families is a really noticeable contrast to me that I mean, I wasn't wealthy growing up here, but I had the supports that I think a lot of kids and sisters right now don't have because of the way that our economy is really driving families into a lot of desperate circumstances.
Thanks, Lindsay. Amy, you live in Bend and have spent most of your career with kids, families, and educators in some capacity, and most recently in Bend and LaPine. So I'd love to hear, now that you've heard from these folks, how does that compare or contrast to maybe what you're observing in other communities, either here in Central Oregon or elsewhere? Are we unique here? Tell us where we're unique and special.
You are very unique and special. I grew up in a town of 3,000 people, actually. And so a lot of what I'm hearing is similar. I hear the relationships with teachers and grown-ups, you know, with all of the stuff and research I've done around technology. One thing that is really kind of poignant for me is that if a child has a relationship with a trusted adult, that an in-person connected relationship that can really help buffer some of the challenges. There's a woman named Emily Churkin. She's actually coming to speak at Cascades Academy on Tuesday. You're all welcome to come. It's an open educational event. And she helps families work on using tech intentionally and helping their kids form healthy habits. And she has this mantra. She says, with addictive technology or technology in general, here are the three things. Less is more, later is better, relationships first. And less is more, later is better. That might vary family to family what that looks like, but the relationships first piece really resonates. And it sounds like here in Sisters that's happening, which is amazing. You know, Bend obviously is a bigger community. And I think generally, just as a parent, my concern would be, Faith mentioned the online piece of Facebook. I do feel, and we'll get to this later, that the way technology has sort of replaced for kids and parents to a point, in-person socialization and communication, so much of our peer interaction for our young people goes through social media and online platforms. As a parent, I feel concerned about what that looks like, and sometimes it can lead to a lot of great connection, and others, there can be some big challenges. So I'm trying to wrestle with myself as a parent. How do I help my child work through that? Because I do value in-person relationships, and it sounds like, as Lindsay mentioned, all of the beautiful activities that you have, those are really great and engaging. So I think about time displacement. When we have kids who are drawn to devices, and perhaps it's because parents are busy, and they're saying, okay, you know, I'm not gonna be home until 8 p.m., here's your phone, etc. And that feels safe for families to know my kid is there. And then I also wonder, what is the time on the device displacing in terms of connected, growing, passionate activities? That's not specific to sisters, it's sort of a general question that I think many communities are struggling with.
Thanks, Amy. Before we move to the state of the parents, one thing during some of our prep conversations is just that acknowledgement of COVID and what a twist that threw into the entire youth and adult and parent experience. But Faith, maybe going back to you, going through school here in Sisters during COVID, what type of impact did you see on, or what type of impact did that have for you and maybe on other students in terms of that tight-knittedness and just thriving the lack thereof in this community?
I was lucky enough to be like not in high school yet and not learning how to read online or do basic math, which I'm grateful for. But I think it definitely took a toll on like relationships and how like learning how to talk to other people instead of just on your phone, because on your phone feels safer.
Did that feel like an accelerant for spending more time online?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Yeah.
It was, now we have a habit. Now, how do I break that habit?
I think that probably resonates for a lot of folks in the room. Charlie, anything else you wanted to say about what you witnessed during COVID? And
Yeah, like I said, I came back to the high school after COVID we're back full time, and the sophomores felt like seventh graders. in their ability to how they were socializing and whatnot. No offense to any seventh graders, but that's a time when kids are really trying to figure out how they're supposed to behave. And the sophomores are more like that, I noticed. And then kids were out of shape academically really badly. And I was talking to some freshmen, I remember, and they said, there's a lot of them that weren't doing very well at the time in the first 6 weeks of school. It was like getting desperate. We're on a 12-week trimester and a bunch of them were failing. And talking to them, they were a little offended when I said, you guys are out of shape. You're out of condition as students. And they were a little like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, just tell me what was seventh grade like 2 years ago? They said, oh, right. They knew how much they missed. So they're catching up though. It's coming back.
That's great to hear. Yeah, it was interesting looking at some of these sister school district at a glance stats. For instance, ninth graders, 95% of them on track to graduate. So it seems like maybe some of the older students and our graduation rate, or students earning a diploma within 4 years, 90%. So the older kids maybe who already had some of those skills developed, maybe didn't struggle as much. But for instance, eighth graders who are meeting the state math standards, only 30% of sister school districts kids are meeting state math standards, and that's better than the state average of 26%. Third graders meeting state language arts standards, 52%, and the state average is 40%. So even if we're doing better than maybe some other communities, there's clearly still a long tail of COVID that it sounds like folks are recovering from. We're gonna say something else,
Yeah,
man?
I'm not surprised by that at all. We were online and it was really difficult to do math online. Like, I went to all my classes and I was sitting in front of Zoom and whatever, but all my other siblings were like, no, I'm not gonna sit here and do this. No, I'm not gonna sit in front of the screen and just watch videos until.
Yeah, I don't know what everybody's big deal is. I mean, my 2-year-old was thriving on Zoom in daycare. So that really worked well for all of us.
Yeah, I see a lot of younger kids, especially, kids who should have been in preschool during that time, where they're learning a lot of basic skills about communication and taking turns. And now my kids are in elementary school, and there's a lot of struggle in the classroom with things that feel very basic. And it's not the kids' fault. They didn't have an opportunity to build those muscles. And so I think we have to make sure that we are putting in adequate supports to help them reach the stage they should be at developmentally. They really lost a lot. And we didn't know at the time how detrimental this would be, but I think the elementary kids are struggling with similar things that you talked about, right? With those social skills, but I see sensory challenges being really, really difficult in the elementary school, where maybe they just weren't used to the volume or the sound, the lights and all of the people around them. And so I think we need to help kids with that sort of sensory diet and help them feel like they can build up their resilience to cope with being in a social environment.
Just one more pop in. When we started Well Wired, my co-founder and I, we had this light bulb moment, like, okay, COVID happened. We all did we all did our best to get through a hard situation, both at home and at school. Now we're moving forward. We're not leaving it behind. It's not like it never happened, but if we could just all take a pause, and school districts and families, communities, and say, the choices that we started to make and the habits that we began to form as a result of necessity, which our circumstances have changed now, life circumstances, can we intentionally just take a minute and assess, is this working? Is this not? What changes do we need to make moving forward? And, Dr. Becky, some of you may know Dr. Becky, she's a parenting expert. She talks about this metaphor of a plane, flying a plane. So if you're a pilot flying from New York to LA, and let's say I'm a passenger on that plane, and the pilot says, okay, we're going from New York to LA, great. All of a sudden in the middle of the flight, there's some turbulence, right? I, as a passenger, am not going to want the pilot that says, we're still going to LA, or let's say there's an emergency. We're still going to LA, that's the end destination. I'm going to want a pilot that says, you know what? I received new information. I'm going to course correct and make a different choice. I might have to land somewhere else so that we are safe, but I'm going to make some changes and adaptations based on new information. So we are getting new information now, both, as what the detriments were of, from young kids to high school kids, having to do so much online, and also what we know now about the technology that's so prevalent. We know much more about algorithms and persuasive design and all this stuff. So we're just saying, let's look at where we're at and where we want to land.
Thanks, Amy. Lindsay, let's go back to you as we shift into the next section, part 2, the state of the parents. We can't talk about kids without talking about parenting, right? So let's talk about it. The U.S. Surgeon General recently issued an advisory on the mental health and well-being of parents, which highlighted the, quote, urgent need to better support parents, caregivers, and families to help our communities thrive. It found that parents are more stressed, have more to worry about, and have higher expectations and more responsibilities placed on them compared to other adults and prior generations, and that this is negatively impacting the well-being of kids. As a local parent then, Lindsay, and as a medical professional, does this resonate, or is Citrus sort of a Pleasantville that's insulated from all of that bad stuff out there?
No. Yeah, it definitely resonates. It resonates for me as a woman who's trying to raise 2 kids and has a spouse that works and I work, and it's just like not enough hours in the day to pull off all the things that the world tells us we're supposed to do and to do perfectly. Really embrace good enough parenting, right? There's actually a lot of longitudinal data to support that parents who are just working to be good enough for their kids, that's perfect. Perfect is kind of creepy. But to show up with people, totally, yeah. But to show up for my kids when it matters and to say to them, yeah, I can't be there for that recital at school today, like, mom and daddy work. Everybody's family is different. To just normalize that this is hard, we're all doing the best we can, I actually think is a really important message for our kids too, that like, I mess up sometimes, I can't always do all the things that you want. So, no, we're not a Pleasantville, but I don't want that, like, I think the goal of good enough parenting and leaning on our community when we can't come through in our own house, you know, my mom's here in the audience, she's helping out, we're like leaning on the people who really are that safety net for our kids.
Yeah, we'll put some foreshadowing for the It Takes a Village section, part 4. Stay tuned. Charlie, not to put more pressure on parents, but I imagine you get to bear witness to how various parenting tactics and approaches impact the well-being of students, for better or for worse. So are there any recent trends you've observed that you find either problematic or encouraging?
Well, the encouraging part is parents really, really care. And Lindsay, you guys are both currently parents with young people. It's really hard at any time, but I think right now it's maybe harder than it's been in a while. And I just want to acknowledge it's hard. And so I wrote down, I think we all need to take stock of how we're doing. And I like what you said, Amy. And so when we talk about family stress, there's a lot of different things that are stressing families. We've mentioned some economic stress. I'm going to say political stress and just the environment, the atmosphere that we've been living in for a few years now that's divisive. It's stressful. And people are maybe taking in a lot of stress by what they're listening to and watching. And that's one. Technological stress, as Amy's going to talk about. I think there's just a general exhaustion, and that in itself makes it hard to be doing your best because you're tired. So that's a stressor also. I also think there is one thing I've noticed that is maybe more so, and maybe, I don't know if this is right or not, but it seems to be prevalent, is a lot of comparing of, am I doing as well as my neighbor, right? And so, you know, Susie got a volleyball scholarship, how come you didn't? The neighbors down the street just got granite countertops, we don't have those. You know, whatever it is, there's a lot of comparing that I think families do. And they also, I think, compare, like there's a sense that everyone has to do better than average. And I don't know, I think average is okay sometimes. Not everyone needs all A's, right? And so some of those stressors, I think we just need to take stock of. That's the unrealistic expectations. I think sometimes people really believe that they have to do all these things. And they maybe don't have to do them all. I love it that we have a lot of opportunities for kids, but sometimes I think kids are overscheduled. They really are. I wonder, when did the family ever just hang out for the afternoon when there's, you know, club baseball all weekend at the coast, and then whatever else with the other kid, and then there's just the regular homework or whatever. I think sometimes people need to say, I need a break. I can give myself a break. So some of the things that are stressing people out, I think we have more control of than we realize. If we just can stop and say, we could do this differently. But I think we're so busy, we don't have time to reflect. And that ties into also a theory I have just about the input we have of information, technology, even audio books. I found myself listening to a lot of audiobooks in the last few years, and I realized now when I'm mowing the lawn, I'm not thinking about just life. I'm listening to someone read me a story, and I never have that quiet time. That's where creativity happens. That's where kind of taking stock happens. You know, I think we're just so often filling ourselves with stuff, and we need to maybe take a break. So that is a change I've seen.
Yeah, well,
And we all need to deal with it as adults and kids, but I do think that parental stress clearly affects kid stress.
it's almost like they're learning from us.
You know, and I'm not, none of that is a judgment, we're all in this right now, I think. Whatever role we're playing in our lives, whether we're grandparents or currently parents of young kids or students, we all have a part to play.
Yeah, no, that tendency to do as I say, not as I do. Sometimes I think with parenting is really tricky. And we do need to take these breaks to take stock of the situation as well. I've certainly had times where it's like, okay, that's enough screen time. You know, happens all the time. Speaking of screen time and parenting, Amy, I know that you enjoy the work of Jonathan Haidt as well, and find it really intriguing. He's an author who's written a lot about youth and parenting and life online and all those things. He has argued that we're now overprotecting kids in the real world while underprotecting kids online. I think that kind of piggybacks off of what some of Charlie's been talking about. Do you agree with that sentiment? Are we focusing on the wrong things?
Yeah, I generally agree with that sentiment. And he wrote The Anxious Generation and a really great article in the Atlantic called End the Phone-Based Childhood Now, and many other things. I do think one organization that he just co-founded, that I have taken a lot of, called Klein, is called Let Grow, letgrow.org. And the idea is that we feel that our kids are safer when they have the device in front of them because they're quiet, they're in a place, one place in our home. And he would argue that there's so much that happens online that parents are unaware of, and also that's out of our control. The idea of the input, that our kids are getting so much input from, hundreds of people, whether it's on social media, or whether it's just auto scrolling videos on YouTube Kids. It's a constant sense of input and influence. And in real life, I think I had wrestled with this too as a parent. You're worried, can I let my kid walk to the grocery store by themselves? Can I let my kids go play at the playground? What if someone says they shouldn't be doing that? Are they capable? Are they competent? And so his argument is that in real life, we're sort of overly protecting them from having those real growing experiences that they need to have. And Let Grow, this organization really focuses on raising independent, competent kids. So ironically, as we've given more devices to our children, I think what I'm seeing and what I think he's advocating for is that they become more dependent on the devices than we have too. We're checking on them, problem solving potentially for them, because we can get in touch at any time throughout the day. And I'm not against communication or technology for communication. I think it can be great. The question is, what kind of communication, what kind of device, and what kind of access? And when we are then using devices as kind of a blocker for, we call smartphones experience blockers. So if we're blocking our kids' experience of really learning the in-person, real-life, challenging skills like being bored or having a hard conversation with a teacher, then that's problematic for our kids' development, especially during adolescence when we know their brains are rapidly changing. And so Let Grow gives parents, schools, communities. They're actually doing a Let Grow program at a school in Bend, and it's a way to say, okay, young person who's just learning and growing and has lots of passion, what is something that you want to do that you feel like, I think I can do it, I'm not sure, I want to try this thing, like scramble eggs, or go to the grocery store by yourself with a list and work the checkout, or learn a new hobby. And it really empowers kids in person to gain competence. Because if you're going to try to limit some of the device use, then what are you building back for your children? So that they say, okay, yeah, I can totally do this and have a really full life in real life. So it's a way, I think, also to push parents to say, you know what? Let's give them some independent skills so that we can kind of like move beyond that kind of overprotection in person that we've kind of gotten accustomed to, and also then have less use of the devices.
All right, Katie, what do you think of all this parenting mumbo jumbo talk? Are the parents just incessantly out of touch? Are we never gonna fully understand the youth experience, or what do you think of all this?
I wanted to comment on like the doing your best part. I have 5 biological siblings, and my mom did her best to be there for us and meet all of our needs while keeping us afloat and going to school and providing for all of her needs. And she didn't get to do all the things that maybe we wish she would have, but we all know that she was doing her best, and we see that, so we have grace. And the whole out of touch thing, like you don't know what it's like to grow up with the internet and what that has been like, but that doesn't mean you can't listen and like try and understand.
One of our next missions is to like go into middle school and high school. We did listening sessions with parents, and I'm like, I mean, Keith and I kind of chatted when we had planning week this, but I do really, as a parent, it is hard to figure out, like, you want to tune into the experience of the people who come before your kids, right? Because I have younger kids, so I think that's a really valuable point.
Thank you, Faith. Yeah, it's a good reminder. Yeah, I think it might have been Dr. Becky who said this actually, but the most important tool in the parenting toolkit. So I wasn't gonna say listen, I was actually gonna say repair. Because we all know we're gonna,
Yeah.
we all know we're messing up, right? Left, right, and center. But if we can repair, then maybe the kids have a chance of at least knowing that we were doing our best and can give us a little bit of grace, and it goes both ways, right? Anything else folks want to say on the state of parenting before we move to part 3?
One thing I've encountered that is a fairly new thing, but it's always been there to some degree, is, that idea of letting kids learn by doing, let them have a chance to maybe even fail. It seems to be that there's such a almost feeling like I can't let my kid fail. It would be so embarrassing or shameful. I don't know what all the reasons are that parents might feel that way. I've been a parent of 5 kids. I know that sometimes I was really worried how my kids were gonna do. But if we can remember that it is all learning and that it's okay for them to struggle. So one of the things I've noticed though is I'll often get phone calls from parents on behalf of their kids that the kid could have just walked in my office and asked. And so I'm repeatedly saying, have your son come in and I'll answer all the questions you just asked me. And so trying to reteach the parents that the kids can do it themselves. That whole communication piece, we owe it to them to learn how to do that and problem solve. And it works like a charm, of course, but sometimes the parents are so worried my kid is gonna miss out on something, or they've got a B and it's not good enough, and we just need to let people struggle with it. It's okay. And COVID, that was the other thing with COVID. I think people got used to easy off-ramps. Expectations were low. And when I first came back after retiring, I was noticing a lot of people said, well, can't I just take my math class online? And like, no, because it's not high quality. It's not a good situation, but can I? And there was such a struggle to get people back on the highway and not taking the easy off-ramp. So I think that as a school system, our school teachers, my wife teaches 5th grade here, she's challenging the kids every day and trying to grow the 5th graders as being standing on their own 2 feet. And I think that we all need to do that together. So just something I've noticed that seems a little more than it used to be.
Yeah, I know I'm not a parent, but I will say that in my opinion, I think a parent is meant to help pick us up when we fall and not preventing us when we fall.
Put that on a bumper sticker. Yeah, one of our recommended readings was How to Raise an Adult by Julie Lipcott Haynes, who was my freshman dean of students and observed a lot of helicopter parenting and took some advice away from that. So I recommend it.
I had a thought about how the community can support this too, because like for example, I was picking my son up from gymnastics and we were waiting for him and we were in this upstairs waiting area. And I looked around and I noticed that every kid, except my kid, was like on a device, like on an iPad or a phone or something while they were waiting. And this is not a judgment. It's just, I'm noticing it. And I was like, oh, I think it's because we're all scared for our kids to like look like they're not perfect kids, to be like loud or grab the hand sanitizer, which my son did, and spray it all over the room, etc. But I think as a community, I think we're pressuring, we feel pressure as parents, and that's kind of going with the idea that our kids can't ever try and fail. So we're sort of all managing, and devices are kind of an easy way to manage that, right? But if as a community, we kind of reinvented what it looked like to be like, oh, yeah, we're all out to dinner and like, oh, there's a table over there. Those kids are super rowdy. They're climbing on the table and grabbing the forks. You know, that's okay. If we can kind of give ourselves permission to be imperfect and our kids permission, then I think we would rely less on the devices to kind of create the image that we're all good and quiet and wonderfully behaved.
You know, the flip side of that I really appreciate in this community is it seems like other parents aren't as scared to correct my kids. And I really like that. Like,
You can hear it from another grown-up.
yeah, well, I mean, like, honestly, sometimes, like, Kara at the front desk of Ace Hardware, like, corrected my kids the other day when they were doing something. She's like, you listen to your daddy, and I was like, thank you, man, that's great. But also, like, I think sometimes we're so, like, if another parent corrects our kids, we're like, how dare you do that? That's my job to be the parent. But actually, from the it takes a village mentality, we can all sort of chip in on that. All right, let's keep moving here because this is the juicy part now. The elephant in the room. Spoiler: it's social media. Okay, the elephant is social media. So Amy, let's go back to you. When we talk about modern kids, one of the elephants in the room, and there's probably more too, which is accused of being a systemic driver of issues like teen mental health crises and cyberbullying and social isolation, is social media, which has been your core focus. So tell us, what is the data saying about teens and social media and how it's informed your work?
Okay, so when we started this group, Well Wired, my co-founder and I, we have fifth grade daughters. They were in fourth grade when we started, and this is really like the like mother instinct inside me just driving forward because I know that social media, especially for girls, has proven to be challenging, and all children can struggle with it. So we did a bunch of research. Jonathan Haidt has an open source Google document with a ton of research on the subject, not just from him, but others.
It's linked in your packet.
Oh, great. And we called local experts in Central Oregon, school counselors, pediatricians, child psychologists, and said, what are you seeing and how can we help? So what we know is that social media, like I said, does have some positive benefits, especially in a smaller community where you are more geographically isolated, let's say, and feel like you may not be able to be totally authentic with your home community. You can reach out beyond that, right? And yet, studies also show that when you're using social media for that connection, you very well could be the victim of cyberbullying and online hate because, as we said, what happens online just doesn't have the same resonance often for our kids as if it was in person, and then we would really understand what the consequences are of our impacts. So we know that there are some positives, we know that there are also some negatives. We talk about body image, we talk about anxiety and depression, which we know go up for girls specifically when social media use goes up. We know that 30% of teens report that they use social media almost constantly, and the majority of teens do have social media on smartphones earlier and earlier, middle school and up. And the Surgeon General, he did release an advisory before the advisory on parents and parental stress and pressure. It was an advisory on social media.
It's in your packet.
It's in the packet. And we know that these advisories in the past have been reserved for really significant public health issues. So in the past, these advisories are for things like, or were for things like cigarettes, seatbelts, sunscreen. And it takes about 30 years for all of the legislation of the systems to catch up to regulate. So we're kind of in a bind because we're like, oh, we can see that we're not sure how this is going to go, but as parents and maybe as kids, this is a struggle. At the same time, many kids say, well, I can't not be on social media, right? So a third of kids say they feel addicted. And in large part, it's because of this idea of belonging, the social pressure. And many, anecdotally, many teens say if no one had it, or let's say the school day was like nothing, phones were away all day, but everyone followed that, I would feel comfortable taking a break. But there's this sort of social pressure. And that's where the collective action piece comes in. So the Surgeon General does recommend in that advisory, he does recommend age 16 as the minimum age for social media use, if not 17 or 18. And he says families need to take collective action and schools need to take collective action together. So we actually launched the pledge. We have over 550 kids signed up so far in Central Oregon, and if you'd like to join us, feel free. And the pledge
So the
is
packet.
to choose a basic phone for communication and, any other sort of non-addictive apps that you might need for your child until high school, and then to wait on social media until age 16. And we are not under the illusion that there won't be exposure, or you won't have friends who might have social media, but we're trying to give more space for families who might want to wait and have a longer on-ramp. Because I do think that, the school counselors we've talked to have said they have seen many children struggle with addictive use of social media and self-esteem. We know that the apps and platforms are designed to keep us on as long as possible. It's called persuasive design. We know that dopamine in our brains is released at a fairly high rate, similar to gamblers' brains when they do kind of brain scans. And so I'm thinking to myself, why are we subjecting our kids to this challenge? Now, that doesn't mean they're never going to be subjected to it or have to wrestle with it or use it for good. But can we teach them? Can we all of them maybe teach ourselves too, ways to use these platforms more intentionally? And I think it's an uphill battle because they're not designed to be a tool. They're designed to keep us hooked.
Amy, can I ask a question? Does that collective also have suggestions about, like putting your cell phone home, away at night?
Yeah.
Things like that?
Yeah, so there's so many different things that we now know, sort of any habit changes, I call them. And then honestly, since I started Wellwired, I've really changed my relationship with my phone and social media. Keeping phones out of bedrooms is huge. We know sleep is a huge priority for our kids and for all of us. And that if you have a phone nearby, even if it's off during the night, your sleep is less likely to be restorative. Having meals and family time free of devices. The whole idea is that we need boundaries. Our kids need us to set boundaries. We have to set boundaries for ourselves, but we're trying to set boundaries with things that don't want us to set boundaries, and they're very savvy and manipulating. So, how do we set boundaries? I have a little box. It's a gold box. I call it my tech box, and I put my phone in there when I come home if I know I have a couple hours free. And if my children see me with my phone and I'm distracted, I might be usually sending a message about work, but they will say, "Mom, phone in the box." And I'm talking to them about what is hard for me. So I'm trying to model that it's not perfect and that we are going to have these as part of our lives. But we need to give ourselves a break and some limits on how to do that.
So if I have a 7th grade daughter and you have a 7th grade daughter, I can say to my daughter, well, Amy also isn't allowing her daughter to have that.
100%. So
That's part of it.
that's what collective action. It could be sleepovers, right? And when you come to our house, we check our phones in the box, and that's what we do. Now, of course, we have to make it still enticing because we don't want to be the boring house. At the same time, maybe we're just going to be the boring house, and that might be okay too. So yeah, collective action is really important.
Faith, when I was going through some of the statistics about social media, one thing that jumped out to me was that teens are more likely to say that there's more positives from social media than there are negatives from social media. Also, girls are more likely to say that the positives are the highs are higher and the lows are lower in terms of like the pros and cons of social media. I'm curious, based on what you heard from Amy, what resonates with you and how is social media impacting your life, friendships, all that stuff?
Yeah. There's a lot. There's so many things I wanted to talk about. How do I have a choice in it? I personally think I do have a choice. I don't think, oh, this person's on it, I need to be on it too. There's so many apps no, I'm not gonna get that. I have no interest in that. But I get what you're saying. I totally understand that mindset.
I think it might depend on age too.
Yeah.
Like you have your prefrontal cortex is a little bit more developed, so like that judgment center, right?
And that personality, I'm very no, I'll go my way. And if you're not there that, then you'll probably fall into that. How it's impacting my life, I would say it has a huge role in my life just by what I'm seeing every day. But positive or negative, yeah, there's some negatives towards it. But personally, I've had a great relationship with social media. I send funny videos to my friends and we laugh about it and we talk about it. And I find new books on there that I'm interested in and I go, oh, that's a really good book, I should read that. Or I'm updated on news and polls and like elections. So it's not like all bad.
I can imagine in a small town that can be one thing that makes the world feel a little bit bigger. It makes you feel like, you have access to people that aren't in your business all the time and that kind of stuff. Is that a fair description?
Yeah, and like in Sisters, there's not a lot of diversity
Mhm.
at all. That's like a
Yeah.
fact. And being online, you're open to these new ideas, and you're like, oh, that's really cool, I never knew that. And, oh, that's a different type of life I've never seen.
Well, I imagine for those who are, tend to be othered or like minorities or those who, are more from marginalized groups, that being able to connect online with people who do look or think or feel like them, can really be powerful, again, in a small town where they don't get to see that as much.
Especially like in school, like if you don't fit in, online you will find a community you will fit in.
It makes me think actually like, so part of it is, I think it's so great to have like role models, right? For what you could do, and it sounds like you figured out a relationship that works for you. There's a former social media strategist called Max Stossel, and he does a talk called Teens, We've Been Sneaking Into Your Brains. And it's just a way to say, you're gonna use this and you might love it. And just know the design behind it, so you can be intentional. And we're actually, I think we don't, I think especially middle schoolers really memorize this stuff, right? So if we could kind of, in that pivotal age, have role models and have like productive conversations about what it looks like, then maybe we would, I think you've got to this place naturally, but some kids may need support to get to a place where they can figure out what those limits look like.
Charlotte, I want to turn to you here, but I have a trivia question for the audience. That's why I was hustling over here to pull this up. All right. Who said this quote? The children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for elders and love chatter in place of exercise. Children are now tyrants, not the servants of their households. They no longer rise when elders enter the room. They contradict their parents, chatter before company, gobble up dainties at the table, cross their legs, and tyrannize their teachers. Anyone have a guess? Who said that? Ooh, you are on the right track. It was Socrates over 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago. My point here is like moral panics about what are the kids all right have been happening for generation upon generation upon generation. And I'm curious, from your vantage point within the school system and recognizing that you've raised kids here, you've been in the school system a long time, is social media just the latest moral panic that all the teachers are freaking out about? Is this the television, Simpsons, I don't know, the rock and roll, the jukebox of this generation, or is there something more dramatic going on?
I do think it's more dramatic, actually, because it's so insidious. I don't know if that's the right word. It's creeps in everywhere. And there's so much access to things. When I think of social media, that's one thing, but I also think of just access to other sites.
The internet at large.
Yeah, that is really dangerous to me, as far as kids are curious, and they might be getting exposed to things they have no way to understand, and then they really don't understand how things should be going in a civilized society. That might sound extreme, but I worry about how much access kids have to who knows what is part of it. The other one that isn't really social media that I do concern myself with, I have a nephew that is literally addicted to video games.
Oh, yeah, we have a whole thing on video games too, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that was the moral panic of my generation, so.
It's not right. I mean, sometimes when I hear a kid at the school say, I don't have time to do my homework, I always ask, well, how are you spending that time from 3:30 till 10, and you should be going to bed? And they don't really want to tell me. And I know that they're on their phone or their computer, and they're trying to do their math homework while it's there. Right, the phone is right there.
Yeah.
So I think that it really is a bigger problem than rock and roll or whatever you had on your list of things that were moral panics in the past, because it's just so available. I mean, kids are carrying that around a device every day that can see everything.
We know someone who reframes smartphones not as phones, but as supercomputers. with a calling feature. And so the question that I started asking myself is, when does my child need a supercomputer in their pocket? And would a phone with a calling feature and a messaging feature, would that suffice?
Lindsay, are you seeing the impacts of social media in the healthcare environment?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I think about is that something is always flashing at us or beeping at us or calling our attention, right? And I have a lot of people coming in saying, I think I have ADHD. I saw this thing on TikTok, or I think my child has ADHD. And I just always pause and slow down, like, maybe we're just in society, we're too distracted by our nature. Yes, obviously, I believe that ADHD is a legitimate, condition. And I think that we are leading in a way of all of us being distracted at all times, right? So even at my work, there's like 4 different ways that people can contact me, right? So I see it often with distraction. I see a lot of teenagers with eating disorders. That's been a really big change since the pandemic. We've seen, honestly, like probably 25% of the care I provide at Mosaic is to support patients with eating disorders or symptoms of eating disorders. And before the pandemic, it was like really, really small percentage, maybe less than 2. So I think a lot of comparison culture contributes to that. And I mean, for me in high school, like maybe I saw Cosmopolitan magazine at the checkout and thought, oh, gosh, I don't like that. But then I'm at home and I like, what about my day? And this is really constant for kids. I also have a lot of students who tell me that teenagers and tweens are texting each other really mean things in the middle of the night that they would never ever say to their face. And a lot of those are body image related. So it's not just social media, it's the like 24/7 contact.
I thought about having an event where we just teach people how to turn notifications off on their phones, right? If anyone wants a fun exercise after this and you have an iPhone, go to the settings and go down to the screen time section and just look at your average screen time on a daily basis.
Okay, quick jump on that. We did this as an exercise at our last get together. I won't say the numbers, but I left my phone in the car. And yet, honestly, we all have such different relationships with that, right? And so it's like, what are you using it for? Is it for work? Is it for a meditation app, for a white noise machine? Is it because you're on social media all day? So it's so complicated.
Yeah, I think the thing that was more eye-opening for me than the amount of time on it was the number of pickups and getting to the point of like constant distractions. It's like, why am I picking up my phone 90 times a day? Do I actually need to check on it? Like check on it, put it down again, check it again?
Because they've been sneaking into your brain.
Yes.
One other thing that I see showing up in my office a lot is I have a lot of kids and teenagers who say, I can't get my parents' attention, right? So I very strategically am not charting when the patient is there with me. I don't know if you've all had that experience. It's pretty common in the medical world, where they're like charting all the time to you. And I very deliberately am not on the computer while a patient is talking to me, because so many kids have told me, I don't think I'm not good at it. Like, if she is, it's like, wow, she's scrolling Facebook. Yeah, right. And so I'm really intentional about that. And that's pretty heartbreaking to think that kids are probably having to go to more and more extreme behavior just to get our attention, right?
Now that we all feel terrible about our relationships with our supercomputers in our pockets, well, I do want to be mindful of shifting Q&A here. So we're going to accelerate this last section, which we had called Part 4, It Takes a Village, which is about what opportunities are there for the broader community to support youth in this town. Lindsay, I think it was you who mentioned earlier, maybe it was Amy, the concept of sort of a communal safety net. You know, one of the silver linings, or one of the benefits of this being a tight-knit community is that there is sort of this village mentality of people, I feel like, looking after each other. Can you talk about, maybe what opportunities you see there in terms of the broader community being a safety net for our kids?
Totally. I mean, I both like loved and loathed that I couldn't get away with anything in this town without like running into someone who knew my parents, right? So I think that actually is really fantastic and something that we can all be a part of. It's like looking out for kids, and not in a punitive way, but just in a like, hey, so nice to see you. I know your mom, just saying hi. Maybe it's awkward, probably it's awkward. And also there's a sense of community that comes with that. I think a lot about, there's so many skills in our community that aren't just academic, and sharing those skills is a way that reaches a really broad audience. And so that would be an action I would love to see, as people, maybe someone knows how to weld, or someone knows a like trade, and they could impart those skills to kids, because not everybody, let's face it, is college bound, and we don't want that. We need a society that has a whole variety of professions. And so if you've got those skills, I would love to see people sharing those more.
I love that. I love thinking about ways to help facilitate that type of skill sharing, whether it's with in the schools or through other organizations. Maybe we'll get more into that during the Q&A. Faith, one of C4C's key beliefs is that we all have a role to play in community building, and I think by extension, that means that we all have a role to play in youth well-being. So what can all of us be doing to make this town better for you? Is it a bowling alley? Tell me it's a bowling alley. Pipe dream for me. What else can we be doing to make this a better place for kids?
So many things I could say, and there's not one right answer that would fit every kid. That's just not possible. But I would say something we could work on is listening, and listening with intent to understand and have empathy. I see a lot when kids complain about their struggles, or like, oh, I'm struggling with this is really hard for me. And adults go, well, I had it hard. Like, can you imagine that? Like, look what I've been through. It's like, okay, that's not helping anybody here. It's not helping the kid, and the kid immediately goes, okay, my problems aren't valuable. Like, and then they don't reach out again to share their problems, and that's not good.
Want to share some of those other ideas you had too?
A bowling alley.
I'm putting it in the 2025 budget for C4C. Thank you, Karen. Anything else you want to share in that respect, Dave? That's a pretty solid takeaway there.
A bowling alley or?
No, one before. Amy, I think, you probably already hit on this, but I'll just let you have a moment if you want to share anything else. With social media, you mentioned it's largely a collective action problem. It's hard to convince a kid to get off social media if all of their friends are on that platform, and that's their main point of connection. And so it does kind of take a village, all of us moving in the same direction, to commit to maybe changing some of these norms. Are there any other sort of collective action suggestions that you have?
I mean, I would say well-wired, really, that was the whole point of starting, is try to gather families who want to engage with this. I think we're talking about it so much more as a culture, as a world. So let's just talk about it. I think there's fear around making someone feel judged, making it sound like you've got all the answers. But I think we have the conversations, like, things like this, and then reaching out to other families in the community who you feel you can kind of bubble your kids with. Without, not that you're being exclusionary, but that you're saying, okay, let's work on change, because norm changing is hard, especially because it's not necessarily a norm that we're all as adults going to commit to changing for ourselves, but we have to also look at that piece.
All right, Charlie, let's end this on a high note before we get to the Q&A. So tell me more, what do you think is going great for kids in this town? What should we be really celebrating, or, doubling down on, or leaning into more as a community?
Well, I think there's so many things, and one that I just jotted down, a lot of our kids have the chance to work in the summer, and I think that's one of the greatest things we have going here, because they actually have yet another relationship with some other adults. They're making a little money, but they're also learning a whole bunch of skills that we can't teach all those at the school or at home, right? Of course, I hope that most of you who have kids have your kids do chores, but it's another thing to be doing it in a business or one of the places in town. So the interaction our kids have with adults is high. Even at the high school, if you walk into the wood shop at any given day, there's a number of volunteers that come daily to work with our kids and that have interactions with our kids. We have a lot of guest speakers come in. There's the science club. There's so many ways that kids can be engaged with adults, and it's community-based also at times. And I just think that our kids are really lucky that way, that they're having authentic interactions with adults. Many of the, every school, I think, tries to meet the needs of their kids in their place and time. And Sisters does have some unique programs that have developed out of who lives here. The guitar building class was an idea someone had. The aviation class, someone said, we have an airport here. Maybe we should teach aviation, and it happens. That's the beauty of this town, is that innovation can happen because people believe that there will be support. And so that can't be denied. And so, like I said earlier, when I was writing letters of recommendation, I wrote started thinking of all the things some of these kids have done. They're real things. They're not just academic homework. They're doing real stuff that they can feel proud of. Because that's where self-esteem comes from, is when you've actually accomplished something, right? And so our kids have a lot of places they get to accomplish things. I mean, last year I watched you moderate AP US history show and tell. You know, it was awesome that Faith, as a junior in high school, was up there moderating an evening like you're doing right now.
Shoot, I should have let you sit over
You know,
here.
she's very ready. But I mean, there's lots of opportunity, and we just have to make sure that it's equitable and we're getting as many kids in front of those opportunities as possible. It's not just part of the population.
Ensuring all kids have access to the opportunities and inviting the broader community to be innovative about the way that you can share your skills with the youth in this community. I love those as two good takeaways. All right, let's shift to the Q&A. I've got my my main man Jim over here with a wireless mic. If anyone has a question, please speak into the mics for the sake of the video recording. And I see we have one at the back to go to first.
And there are also, of course, all these empty chairs have the packet also, but
Yes.
there are cards and pencils if you prefer your question to be anonymous.
Yes, so feel free to hold up a card and Jim will come and grab it. And there was a question back left, Jim.
You know, while he's doing that, I was just thinking, last week, 2 different groups of high school kids were in the elementary school working with the kindergartners and some other grade level. That alone is a sign of health and well-being.
Well, I think it was one of them, and that's all I heard about all weekend.
Yeah.
was
Everybody-
these two high schoolers.
Everyone won, right? The kids that came, the teacher came and said, I couldn't believe some of the kids that were the best leaders with those little kindergartners. Like we saw some skills and attributes that we wouldn't have seen.
Yeah.
So we're always looking for ways for that connection, but also opportunity to learn and be givers.
Yeah.
You know, if we can help our kids be generous. You know, we have all these clubs here and whatnot that are part of this community fabric. We need our kids to have a chance to also be giving.
Shout out to the organizations at the back of the room who all have some affiliation with youth in this community. I encourage you to learn more about them after we're done here. Thank you so much for being here, folks. All right, question in the back.
So we have a freshman, in high school, and so what does the school do? Do you guys have any, things about social media that you talk about? Has there been an assembly or anything that, like, I almost brought my son here, I'm kind of glad I didn't, he would have been embarrassed, because he's a young person, but really, I think we need something that the school does that talks more about social media to them directly. And then also, he always seems to wear his ear pods
Right.
in school, and he's like, oh yeah, it helps us concentrate better with music. And I was just like, but it never gives your brain a rest, like you were talking about, to think about stuff. So, like, is there rules about that? And also, can they just put their phone in the box when they come to class?
Hey,
I mean, and then have class and then get their phone.
hey, you want to say anything about policies or education in school?
I can talk about both those questions, but the policy, it mostly depends on the teacher and the class you're in, but most of the classes have you, as soon as you walk in the classroom, you put your phone in the caddy and you have numbered each, like, I'm number 8. So I'll put mine in number 8, they take attendance, they get your phones in the caddy, you're here today. And then you're not supposed to have your headphones in either. I will say there are exceptions in, like, art. You can have your AirPod in, you're not supposed to be on your phone scrolling, you can just put music on, put it down, and then continue your art. And what was your first thing again?
Well, that
I
was
think
it,
it's,
like,
yeah.
Oh, educating, yeah.
Yeah.
We talk about it a lot. Like, there's not like one assembly I can think of where we're like, we're only gonna talk about this, but we read so many articles on it and so many articles I've read about social media and effects and how addictive it is and how harmful it is for us.
Charlie, anything you want to add in that respect?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because that's something we need to continually pay attention to, like, just like any other important topics. Just because last year you talked about bullying doesn't mean you don't talk about it again this year. Last year I did actually go to a health class and presented about the Surgeon General, talk about, social media effects. I think we can always do more. And if there's things that we need to shore up a little bit more, I mean, the earbud thing drives me crazy. Partly, and I'm just thinking, just in the hallway when they're going between class, I'm like, they're not talking to each other, right? It's like that, like I said, I mow the lawn now, listening to an audiobook. Maybe it's okay to take those out, right? So.
You should be talking to them on, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the point. I'm sorry.
Exactly, but, I appreciate you asking that question.
You know, in the packet, there's a news section with some links that you can get to. You'll see that there are significant trends both in Oregon and across the country related to cell phone bans in various schools. So it sounds like, you know, maybe Sisters is already implementing something that, while not an official ban, is pretty akin to that, which is encouraging.
I can talk to you later too, after I've done a lot of school advocacy and done the planning to push for, you know, sort of phone limits and then also education. So maybe we can circle back and I can share what we've done in the planning.
Yeah, I think this is also a great follow-up point for the talk that Amy mentioned on Tuesday, which is in the packet in the ways to take action section. Jim, Edie, hi.
I love hearing what Charlie said, that he believes that all parents really, really care. And I agree. I think that that's an absolute. And so as we hear also of all the stress that we all have as being parents, but we also are very caring. What do parents need in order to do the job that they really want to do, be the best parents they can be? Are we getting that here in Sisters? Is it available? What do you need?
Lindsay, let's go to you first as a parent. Let's go to the parent. Most of us are parents here, so let's give our own opinion.
Fun for me, because I like went to together the program with some of my little brothers with Edie, so, you know, and Charlie was my school counselor. This is just a small world experience right now. The thing that keeps coming in my mind is like childcare swapping, right? So I'm really fortunate we made a choice to live in our hometown where our parents are at. But not everybody has extended family here, and so how can we be that safety net and support for one another? Because being able to have either time by yourself or time to be with a partner or time with friends to be a human who's not actively making snacks, let's just be honest, for a small child is so important and helps us come back and do that good enough parenting when we've been able to get a little filled up. So like childcare swapping is a thing that keeps coming.
Yeah, I echo that as well. I obviously don't live in sister country, but the idea that often we're using devices in our homes, like as babysitters, you know, I'm trying to get something done, okay, watch a thing, do a thing. But if we had more support from like, you know, someone who could take the kids to the park for a little while or meet up with a bunch of kids in the neighborhood where, you know, parents kind of traded off who was kind of like the go-to, okay, if someone gets hurt, call me. That would be great.
Yeah, I think I'm answering as a parent now, not as an unbiased parent, or a biased parent, not an unbiased moderator. I think the childcare swap thing is great, but I also think, well, you know, from the it takes a village mentality, like not just relying on other parents who are probably already taxed. Like I live in a neighborhood that is far and away retirees.
Yeah, that's
And
what I was thinking about.
oh, you were? Okay, great.
Great, because that is such a
Yeah.
generation, how beautiful that relationship might be.
Exactly, yeah, it's sometimes I get a little bit frustrated when I drive by and see all the screens showing MSNBC at night, and I'm like, must be nice, I'm just going home, I'm not gonna do that, and wouldn't it be nice? There's, I think a lot of people that, you know, that have gone through that phase of their life, maybe, and God bless them for, you know, stewarding future generations, and now they're ready to set sail and whatnot, but the parents are not all right, and so from that village mentality, looking beyond maybe your immediate family or your friends and peers, I think I would love to see more of that multi-generational support as well. Charlie, anything you want to add as a parent?
Just, I've often said to people, I think single parenting is the hardest job in all of America. And so if there's anything people can creatively think of that would help single parents, I thought of this years ago and I couldn't implement it myself, but I thought if there was an organization that once a week could deliver a meal to single parent families, that one day a week would be like gold to them, right? That's one less thing mom or single dad has to do, right? Just maybe there are some simple ways we could find ways to reach out to parents that just need a helping hand or a friend or some kind of support. I wrote down on my notes, one of the things that what I think that healthy families have is they have friends that have like-minded goals and values. But if you're not talking to your neighbor or don't know them, it's hard to make that happen. So I agree that that's a great idea. I love the childcare share, whatever that looks like. Anything to help, because it's hard.
Quick plug for C4C's Land of 1,000 Picnics program, where we're offering stipends to help fund neighborhood gatherings. It's a great way to get to know the other people in your community. We'll give you about $100 to $150 if you organize a block party, a picnic, a potluck. Flyers out there if you want them after. All right, I've got a couple questions here. First one for Faith. Faith, tell us what you would have thought if your parents and all your friends' parents together decided no social media until 16.
What age would she be?
Oh, yeah, let's
Yeah.
hypothetical, we are gonna say that you are 12. And your parents say no social media until 16.
Probably be upset. I'd probably like, oh, like, let me have social media.
Yeah.
Everybody else is. I would probably think that.
But you said the friend's parents also?
Yeah, so let's say like there's a crew of like all your closest friends whose parents collectively decided, all right, we're not gonna, our, this circle of trust here is not gonna have any social media for the kids until they're 16. Do you think you also like would have begrudgingly gone along with that, or is that something where things are pretty innovative? Would y'all have figured out a way around that?
I think most people would figure a way around that, but thinking back on my own experience, I think the really only drive I had for social media was seeing my siblings have it and then me being like, oh, that's kind of cool, I want that. So if they weren't on it, we would all just be playing in the field or something. We wouldn't be on social media.
And also the decision of like, you're not gonna have it, and then your friends are gonna have it. But coupled with, what about connected conversations, education around it, a family plan, there can just be other things. It's never gonna, if that decision is made, and I know I'm wading into, I have a 10-year-old, so let's just, but I do think that, kind of all working together on this is important, and figuring out that your kid is not necessarily gonna, like, we're not, our job, back to Charlie, is not to prevent discomfort in our children, or even like anger or frustration. Now the workaround piece, that would be talking and connecting, but I think it's a worthy discussion to have and figure out what you're doing.
So it's not that no social media in a vacuum by itself, it's that it has to be coupled with other collective action or parenting tactics and conversations. Next question here is for Lindsay. We started a little late, we're gonna run a little late. That's my decision. Lindsay, regarding the stat, there was a few stats in the packet about youth mental health. In 2023, Oregon was the worst ranked state in the country for youth mental health. Great news, in 2024, we bumped up from 50th to 49th. Can you talk more about that? Is it just the rain and it's actually all the people on the other side that are depressed and we're skewing at the stats, or is there something unique about Oregon, you think? What's going on with that?
Yeah, I wish I knew. I mean, that is really staggering. I feel like we have systems of care that generally work. We have actually in Sisters a lot of mental health providers. The access issue isn't as severe here as in other places. I wish I could shed light on exactly what it is. I don't know what it is unique to Oregon, unfortunately.
One of the stats here too was 8% of Oregon youth reported a substance use disorder in the past year. You mentioned eating disorders, others, but do you observe a lot of substance use disorders in this community as well?
Well, I'm the alternative to in-school substance use violations, so my data is skewed because if those are happening, they're coming to me. And I've truthfully been pretty shocked by the substances that youth are reporting to me that they're using. It's pretty serious. It's not just vapes and marijuana. We do have youth accessing really serious drugs in this community, not at a regular interval, but periodically. So it's not Pleasantville, to your question earlier.
That might be a bad example anyways. It's wasn't that lesson from Pleasantville, but like it was actually terrible at the end, so. Gonna rewatch it.
One thing that I want to acknowledge is that, in the last few years, the access our kids have had to good healthcare has improved. Mosaic has done a great job, and having Lindsay right next door is really a blessing and a half. But I do think overall in Oregon, my experience is that access is hard to come by. in the places other than here. It's gotten way better here just in the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, think about, I know some of you lived here a long time, 8 or 10 years ago, it was hard to find any mental health care. In fact, Deschutes County, when we begged them to have a counselor be provided out here, they say, well, you guys don't really have any problems. They actually said that to us. And so we persuaded them that we actually did have some problems, and now we've had a behavioral health specialist for a decade. But prior to that, there was very little. So that's a big change that I think did. We might be 49th in the state, in the nation, but Sisters, I think, is above that right now.
I think we had another question in the audience.
My question really is more for Faith. So I love my son is also and he does not have a phone that has social media on it, which initially he was really mad at me about, and now he's like, I don't need it, I don't want a smartphone, which give me one, which is awesome. But we recently had a thing that happened at Klein Springs or Klein Books, right? And we've had other things that happened throughout the community that we can get high school kids at. My question really is, we get a lot of pushback for those things, and I'm trying to figure out if it's related to if he was at a certain age going through COVID and having that uncomfortable social interaction. How do we get our kids and the other kids in their kid group to get off the device collectively as a high schooler? What do you think would work for the kids that are younger, not necessarily you, but younger than you, to say, how do we get them collectively? Because my kids always can say, well, if you take that away from him, because he doesn't want to go outside. He doesn't, I mean, his group doesn't do that. So it feels like as parents, with their friends, even though we know that for. So what would you tell parents of kids younger than you? What's your advice?
Yeah, I would say, I think they're on the social media and their friends are connecting, right? Connecting. I would say then do something where you can connect where you're not on social media. Go have a board game night, go play cards, go do a sport. My friends and I really like Foursquare. We'll go play Foursquare till we drop. We really love board games, even if it's, yeah, I would just, and a lot of kids love sports. You get that community while being active. Just find those activities you can do while you're not on your phone. And have really good snacks at your house.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say,
Yeah.
good snacks and a pool table in the garage.
Yeah,
That would be
sometimes I
fun.
feel like there needs to be a bit of a carrot, you know, it's like an incentive in some way as we're like changing behavior. So what does that look like? Is it awesome snacks? Is it like, I tell my daughter and her friends, I'll give them $20